The only thing left to do is to play this game. We bring you our final thoughts on the matchup on today's episode of Locked On Colts. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Colts fans, thanks so much for tuning in and making us your number one listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Jake Arthur, and I'm joined once again by my PIC, Zach Hicks. We're back and better than ever again today. You know us from horseshoehuddle.com, of course, as well as our snarky banter, especially on Zach's side on Twitter. On today's show, the game I was alluding to, of course, is Colts versus Texans, week 1 this Sunday. It's our final chance to talk to you guys about this matchup. We'll go over the latest news and notes that are helpful for you guys to know ahead of time. And we'll tell you a bit about what we've learned this week studying the Texans and even the Colts, honestly. It's always easy to learn something new. And we'll give you our takes on how we think everything is going to go down. First up, since Zach and I were last together, of course, if you guys missed the crossover with Locked On Texans from Thursday, please check that out. Zach and I were last together earlier this week. But the Colts announced their team captains. It is without any surprise, Matt Ryan, and then Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, DeForest Buckner, Shaquille Leonard, Zaire Franklin, and Kenny Moore. For the most part, those guys are all either multiple-time team captains with previous teams and now the Colts. The only new ones, I think, are Jonathan Taylor and Kenny Moore. Everyone else has been a captain with the Colts. Matt Ryan, of course, last 14 years in Atlanta, but they've talked about his leadership all offseason. So really no surprise there.
Yeah, and the Colts have always given it to their quarterback. I think Jacoby Brissett was a captain as well. Carson Wentz was a captain last year.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people tried to use that as the dunking thing, being like, look, everybody loves him. He's the captain and stuff. Quarterbacks get the captaincy. It's typically how it goes. But I guess the only kind of surprise was maybe Kenny Moore II over Stephon Gilmore. But again, Kenny Moore II's been your Pro Bowl corner, the last couple of years, Pro Bowl caliber corner the last couple of years with the team. He's someone who's loved in the locker room. And we saw the video last year when he got his Pro Bowl nod and how everybody was going crazy for it. So he's definitely a leader in that locker room. And he's earned that captaincy. So just congrats to him. And then also me and Destin joked about it a couple of days ago, but Zaire Franklin, 3 years in a row as the special teams captain. I've only had brief conversations with him, like nothing too crazy. I totally see why the team keeps voting him as a captain. He is one heck of a dude, just a very confident, composed, mature guy. He's always been that way too. So him being a captain for 3 years in a row, well deserved.
Yeah, but he's a tone setter for sure. I watched him a lot during training camp, and the coaches like to use him as a conduit to the rest of the defense a lot of the time. So really no surprise there. Just looking ahead to this Colts and Texans matchup, a little background info. It's a 1 p.m. Eastern kick on Sunday down in Houston at NRG Stadium. On TV, it's on CBS. Tom McCarthy and Tiki Barber on the call. Zach and I were just talking about that. I don't remember Tiki being on the call previously. But it must be something new for him at least. And then on the radio locally, WFNI and WLHK, it'll be Matt Taylor, Rick Venturi, and Lara Overton on the call as always. Injury report, pretty healthy, luckily for the Colts. And yes, you may say it's week 1, but that's not always how it goes.
Guys, we got to revel in this. It's going to be the healthiest this Colts team is going to look all season. So we got to revel in this a little bit.
Exactly. So Shaquille Leonard, he has participated both days. He was a full participant on Wednesday, downgraded to limited. I stretch to say downgraded because it could have been part of the plan. There wasn't necessarily a setback or anything like that, but He's practiced both days. Dennis Kelly, with his knee thing, he had a knee procedure earlier this summer. He was limited both days as well. We really don't know if either player will play. Gun to my head, I don't think either will, but that's not up to me. Shaq talked to the media today, and just how I heard it, it seemed like they're excited he's out there. Everything is progressing well, but they might give it a little more time. It didn't seem like it was going to be some layup that he'll be out there. At least that's not the tone I heard.
Yeah, Frank Reich mentioned it earlier in the week. He said, if he can get up to where they feel he's 80% of who he normally is, in his experience, players typically play when they're at like 80% or so. So he said if he can get to around that level and Shaquille Leonard and the doctors all, check it all off, then he'll be good to go out there. But the Colts are very non-committal a lot when it comes to injuries, and not very. I know fans get upset with this all the time, but they're not very like forthright about everything injury wise. But just the vibe this week has always kind of been like, we're gonna wait and see. I think the big date to circle is week 3. I think week 3 for sure he'll be back by that game. It seems like. I mean, if he's already full practicing now, he's getting a lot of work in now. I think they just want to see him fully up to speed before that huge game against the Chiefs in week 3, the first home game of the season. So if he doesn't play this week, I don't think it's a huge issue. I'm not saying that because, it's just the Houston Texans. I just think you want to prioritize the long-term health of your superstar player, and throwing him out there in a week 1 game where he hasn't even touched the football field for a majority of this offseason, it probably just doesn't make the most sense. So I don't think, a gun to my head, I'm with you. I don't think he plays this weekend, but like we said all offseason, he's a psycho. So if he were to play in this game, it wouldn't shock me one bit. And it also wouldn't shock me if he stepped out there, first game of the year, like basically his first live action of the season, forces like 2 fumbles, has 20 tackles.
Yeah.
Like nothing with him would surprise me whatsoever. But gun to my head, I don't think he goes this week. It doesn't seem like it. They keep saying, like, everybody who's talked, even Shaquille Leonard, has kind of been like lowering the expectation that he's going to play. So I just don't see it.
Yeah, and if the gauge is that, like you said, he has to look something like himself. I'm pretty sure he had a diving interception in his first practice back. So, of course. And I guess I'm okay with the 80% thing as long as there's still room for him to get to 100%.
Right.
If you're capping it at 80, you're like, he starts gameplay now and he's probably not going to get any healthier from it throughout the season because of the wear and tear of the season. I would wait, but
I think the rationale behind that is, and we always hear this in every sport, honestly, you see so many players where they get the surgeries right after the season ends, because so many players play through so many things where, over the course of a season, you're going to be at probably 80% for most of the season, because your body takes so much wear and tear. So I think Reich was kind of making more of a generalized statement where it's like, typically if a guy feels mostly good and they say they want to play, we get him out there. But I do agree this is maybe a different situation with a guy who didn't really participate all offseason.
Mm-hmm. And of course, if he is out, then it should be Bobby Okereke at will, Zaire Franklin at Mike, and then EJ Speed at Sam linebacker. Looking at Dennis Kelly, if he's out, I kind of think he's going to be that 6th lineman, the big tight end for a lot of it. I know Bernard Ryman is probably who they want there, but especially if Kelly's out, I think Ryman gets it. They've done that with plenty of rookies before. Right. They did it with Braden Smith before he became a starter, Danny Pinter when he was a rookie. So it may be the plan right now, and Dennis Kelly may be some other role, but that is who I would imagine would step up in his absence.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. And then looking at the Texans injuries, they're in pretty much just as good a shape. Only 2 guys on their report as well. But both of them did not participate on Thursday in practice. That's Rasheem Green and Mario Addison. They both have thigh injuries. Now, that's their second wave of defensive ends right there. It's Jonathan Grenard and Jerry Hughes are the starters, as far as I can tell. And then Addison and Green are their direct backup. So if you have both your backup defensive ends really banged up or not even playing, that could definitely affect their pass rush. Could make Hughes and Grenard have to play a ton of snaps, which is not ideal. So
yeah, something I'll just say real quick is I'm pretty sure I haven't really been following the Texans super close with how they've been doing a lot of their camp stuff, but I think Rasheem Green's probably their Tyquan Lewis. Like because
yeah,
Roy
I think
Lopez
so.
isn't going to be your pass rusher on the interior on passing plays. Roy Lopez is a pure run stuffer. They're
Yeah.
one tech, they're Grover basically. So I think Rasheem Green was the guy coming in and rotating as that 3 tech. It might have been Thomas Booker, the rookie they just took. Again, I'm not super familiar with how they've been doing it, but yeah, man, if Green and Addison both miss, I mean, those are quality bench pass rushers. So that's something to keep an eye on for sure. Even if those guys aren't 100%, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Green will eventually be back. And of course, he found himself a nice little job with the Texans this offseason. You know what else is a good place to help you find a good job? LinkedIn. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Regardless of what side of the coin you're on, whether it's applying for jobs and loading resumes and stuff, that can be exhausting. And then if you're trying to find the right candidates, that can be its own chore. If you're a procrastinator, then the whole process can just be a reason to put it off until tomorrow, so to speak. But LinkedIn is changing the game, guys. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions and such make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Zach, since I can't talk, we'll talk about something that I wrote today. And that is that's my weekly fantasy piece for the Colts, basically. Like, guys, you're going to want to start. Now, if you've already read it, it's going to get more complex as the season goes on. It's week 1, and there's nothing to go off of except for last year's stuff. So there was 4 groups I really pointed out. Matt Ryan, of course. Houston was 28th against quarterbacks last year, and Carson Wentz had okay games against them. Nothing gaudy. It was completely the Jonathan Taylor show in both matchups. But they have allowed 19 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Matt Ryan's kind of a different animal than Carson Wentz. And while I do still think Jonathan Taylor is going to be the tone setter for the offense, I just see Matt Ryan being able to pick up on loaded boxes and make things happen in play action. I think he's rated as QB 17 right now. That noise is my daughter yelling about dinner.
It's also the kids outside. When these kids in my neighborhood go outside, they just decide that, what's really fun? Let's just all howl at the moon for hours. That's all they do. So it's probably both of them. If you guys are hearing small children yelling wherever you're listening to this, it's probably not in the backseat of your car. It's probably behind us. That's doing it.
Yeah, it's both of us. If my
just
daughter's
make sure you turn around and check, though. Make sure you turn around and check just to be sure. But it's probably
safety first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, Matt Ryan, I'm not a huge fantasy guy, obviously, so I'm just going to do my best here to talk fantasy football. I guess the term I would throw in there would be he maybe in like 2 QB leagues, he's a good player to throw in there. Or if you're in like a 14-team league, I would consider starting him this week. But I think Matt Ryan is going to have more of a better football week than fantasy football week. I think something around like low to mid 200s in passing yards, maybe a score or 2, and just kind of gets the job done while it becomes the Jonathan Taylor show this week, like it usually is against the Houston Texans. That would be great for me as someone who loves football. Maybe not as great for someone like Jake who loves fantasy, but I don't know, maybe around like QB 12, 13, 14, I think makes sense this week. I don't know if it's going to be anything like gaudy numbers, but good football numbers.
Yeah, the fantasy community isn't in love yet. I think he's rated QB 17 heading into this matchup, and that's probably about right. That's probably fine. 17, 18 points. That's about what I would expect.
Right.
Jonathan Taylor, on the other hand, this is going to be a theme, but Houston ranked poorly against like everything in fantasy last year. They were 28th against running backs, and probably a lot of that was because of Jonathan Taylor. They allowed 22 on the nose fantasy points per game to the position. Last year, in 2 matchups, Taylor averaged 23.5 touches for 150.5 yards of offense and scored 4 touchdowns for an average of 27.3 fantasy points per game. That's RB1 numbers no matter how you stack it. If you look back at his whole career, the 4 games against the Texans, it's still similar. It was just turned up to another level last year. So you don't need anyone to tell you to start Jonathan Taylor, so I'm not going to waste too much time on that. But Jonathan Taylor should play well. Bank it. I only highlighted one receiver this week because we just don't know how it's going to fall out. Nyheim Hines is another decent option, but he's someone else I want to wait and see just because throughout his career, it's been so hot and cold. He's had 2-3 game stretches where he's incredible, and then he's not used much for another 3 games.
Yeah, he's
I don't
more
think that'll
of
be the case, but
Hines is more of if you're reeling a little bit in PPR this week and you hope that the Colts had the last drive of the first half and he gets like 4 or 5 catches, then you're feeling pretty good if you have Hines because you'll at least get a steady baseline. But yeah, I wouldn't start Hines just yet. I would wait a little bit.
Right. Wait and see. And I mentioned in there, I was like, I fully expect him to be in the fantasy preview next week, but I'm not going to throw a bunch of guys out there say to start him when we don't even know what their roles are going to look like. So Michael Pittman Jr., obviously, he's probably someone who you're going to want to start every week. He's had actually pretty pedestrian numbers against the Texans in his 4 games against them. I think his highlight was last year. He had like a 77-yard game. It was an okay game, but everything else has been nothing to write home about. Not good fantasy numbers. A lot of that is, the run game taking over, and then what you're working with in the passing game outside of that being Carson Wentz last year in 2 games. I do see him being more productive this week. If it's another 6 catch, 77 yards, that's decent. It's not wide receiver 1 numbers, but that dog will hunt basically. We know he is far and away the focal point of the passing game, and in any setting, you almost always want to start someone like that. Colts defense is probably the next biggest one. It's the last one I highlighted. All you need to do is look at last year's matchup. The Colts outscored them 62-3 in the 2 games. The Colts had 6 sacks, 5 takeaways, and they held the Texans to an average of 247 yards of offense. And according to Yahoo, the Colts defense averaged 16.5 fantasy points per game in those matchups. So I don't know if it's going to be sheer domination like it was last year, but I like him to get sacks. When you're getting pressure and you're getting sacks, that almost always leads to some turnovers. If Stephon Gilmore has Brandon Cooks locked up pretty well, then you're going to have to be reliant on Nico Collins and Pharaoh Brown and Brevin Jordan. And I just don't know that Houston's offense is ready to dance with the Colts defense. So I would definitely start them as well.
Yeah, the last thing I'll add is if you're taking a shot on a Colts skill position player, if you want to just swing for the fences, I would swing for more of the guys who are going to catch passes further down the field than the guys who are more the yards after catch. The Texans last year, I think, were top 5 in the NFL in limiting yards after the catch, but they were in the bottom 5 of the league in air yards per attempt against. So they were allowing a lot of downfield completions, but they weren't allowing many guys to get yards after catch. So guys like a Kylan Granson catches a lot of passes around the line of scrimmage because they want to get him those run after catch opportunities. Mo Alley Cox will probably catch more around the line of scrimmage as well because he's that safety net this year. Even Alec Pierce, I think, is more of a catch and fall down type guy, at least early in the season. He's going to run those backside digs. He's going to run those outbreaking comeback routes and stuff like that. So I don't anticipate too many vertical shots, but maybe a guy like Paris Campbell makes a lot of sense where there's going to be some vertical shots. He had he had one last year where he scored against the Texans. So, if you want to swing for the fences on a skill position player with the Colts, maybe take a bet on Paris Campbell getting a big catch, but That's all I could really say fantasy wise here. I'm not. I like fantasy football, but I'm not really much of a betting man. But if you guys are, if you guys love betting, the Colts enter this one as 7-point favorites with an over/under of 45.5 according to Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and even golf. Head to the website today or use the mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
I was on mute. You guys didn't get to hear it.
Oh no! You'll have to edit it in. Edit your voice in there.
Of course.
Yeah, and we also I want to talk to you guys about home field. We talked about home field quite a bit on here. We're wearing our home field stuff. You probably heard us tell you all about them by now, but you can also see what we're talking about. We're both wearing it. You even put it in my script here, Jake. Oh,
I sure did, bud.
You knew it. You knew. How'd you know I was going to wear this? I didn't even tell you beforehand.
Well, you've already said that it's your intention to wear that.
Yeah, it is.
See, I listened.
Home Field is an apparel company that recently teamed up with the Indianapolis Colts for a 6-item collection: a hoodie, a crew neck, 2 t-shirts, joggers, and a jacket. It's been out for a few weeks now, so you'll definitely want to check it out. Home Field is based out of Indy and was a natural choice for the Colts to want to partner with this new campaign. New customers can get 15% off their first purchase from Home Field with Locked On Colts at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. All right, Jake, let's get to these final thoughts. I mean, look, when it comes to this game, we've talked about this game pretty much all offseason now. I mean, How much can you really say about Colts Texans at this point? But I guess my final thing I kind of want to talk about is Texans fans love their pass rush this year. They are loving their pass rush. Every comment I get from Texans fans is, Texans are going to sack the Colts 6 times or whatever. Texans going to win the game because their pass rush. And I'm like, and I looked at it today. Did I bat that
hive, though, by giving them a little cred the other day? Because I know you had to kind of squash it a little bit.
I don't know. Like, the thing is, I looked at their pass rush again because I was like, maybe I missed something. Maybe they added like a superstar. But I like what they have there. I mean, Rasheem Green obviously is a guy who I was begging the Colts to sign, even though he might not play in this game. Rasheem Green's awesome. Jonathan Grenard is awesome. Jerry Hughes is a guy we all know and love. Malik Collins is solid. Roy Lopez is a good one tech. Thomas Booker was a guy that I really wanted in the draft for the Colts. But again, I keep going back to my comment. If you're scared of this Texans pass rush, what's your fear level at when you play against like the Titans or the Chiefs or the Chargers or the Vikings later in the year? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I do think this game is a great litmus test for this Colts offensive line. Last year was probably the worst we had seen this Colts offensive line play since like the first 5 games of 2018. The first like 5 games of 2018 before Braden Smith got thrown into the lineup, it was an atrocious offensive line. Like, it was downright terrible. And since then, it's been really steady play, except last year it was very inconsistent. Very inconsistent. Eric Fisher was not good. Quentin Nelson probably had his worst season. Ryan Kelly probably had his worst season. Injuries across. Braden Smith missed a lot of time. This is a good litmus test to see if this offensive line is still good.
Yeah.
So I do get. I get some of Texans fans saying that they might have some success, but I'd be shocked if the Colts offensive line struggled that much against this pass rush. I think it's a fine pass rush. I just this isn't a top tier group in my opinion.
Right. So if I'm not mistaken, I think most of their pass rushers are kind of more power based. They're not these real agile. They're not the Yannick Ngakwe's, basically.
Right.
So I'm curious as to, Matt Pryor has faced Yannick Ngakoue on a million reps. He knows how to play him, and he's done quite well in the one-on-ones. So I'm curious how it's going to go when someone just like kind of bull rushes him, or, with Danny Pinter, is he going to be able to handle a stronger guy like a Roy Lopez? Is Malik Collins kind of a powerful guy, or is he more of a twitchy inside guy?
I don't really know if he does much on passing downs. I mean, he's an agile dude. Like he's a quick, strong dude. You know, he was good with the Cowboys. And I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but I wouldn't really classify him as like a scary pass rusher. You know, like he's a solid all around defensive tackle, but I wouldn't classify him as a scary pass rusher on the interior. He might maybe eat my words and throw Danny Pinter into Matt Ryan like 6 times, but I don't know. I like their pass rush. I don't want to say anything too bad about it.
It's fine.
Yeah. But the other big thing I think is kind of litmus test on the other side is this is a huge, huge game for the Colts defensive line. It is a monstrous game for this defensive line because the Texans revamped their offensive line this year. It's actually looking pretty decent on paper. I kind of like their offensive line. The Colts also revamped their defensive line and are bringing a new scheme. And the Colts want to get after the passer a little bit more this season. And the quarterback they're going against, Davis Mills, his biggest issues come when he's under pressure, when he's under duress. So this is a game where this new defensive line against a better offensive line and a quarterback who struggles under pressure, they have to get pressure. It's just so vital in this game. If the Colts want to cruise to victory like they did in 2 games last season against the Texans, their defensive line needs to come to play. So honestly, I know we have so many people who listen and so many people we talk to that are like, oh, it's the NFL is all skill position players and quarterbacks and stuff, but this game's going to be won and lost in the trenches. I know you guys hear that all the time from all the old heads. You know, Rick Venturi's probably going to be saying that the whole time going into the game. But this game is a huge litmus test for both of the Colts lines, in the trenches on both sides. And I think they're going to play well, but, if they don't, then I understand why people would be, a little furious after the game.
It definitely is. I mean, on the crossover show last night, we did a whole segment on, matchups, and it took us forever to get out of talking about trench matchups. It just is going to be what decides the game. And for the Colts, it needs to be validation of their approach this offseason. I think we're fans of the moves they've made, but it needs to work now. Their pass rush was subpar last year. 33 sacks is not enough. And I mean, you can't have those long stretches where you're not getting to the quarterback at all. Forget sacks. They're not getting hits. They're not touching the quarterback. That has to change. They've got the guys to do it. We think they've got the coordinator to do it. It is a huge test. Plus, Houston's run game has a little spark now with Dameon Pierce. The expectation is that the Colts run defense might take a little step back just because of the scheme and what Matt Eberflus demanded. You're probably gaining some pass rush and giving up some run defense perhaps in the scheme change. They still have to step up and stop Dameon Pierce. I mean, I'm not going to be afraid of a rookie running back, a rookie mid-round running back or whatever, but it's legitimate. They're going to have to stop the run. We've seen so many games stupidly lost before because they can't stop the run to a team they have no business allowing that against. So that it is going to be a huge game for the defensive line.
Yep. And then the last thing that I'm more excited than anxious about, but I just want to see him in game action. How does Matt Ryan look with the Colts? So this is our 3rd season in a row going into week 1 with a quarterback who we didn't see at all in or I think it's with a quarterback we didn't really see at all in the preseason. I mean, Matt Ryan had a couple snaps. He had more snaps in this preseason than the last 2 new guys had combined in their preseasons. So it's kind of a nervous thing. Okay, is he going to actually look like what we expect? I think he's going to be good, but there is that little bit of anxiety with it. But I do think ultimately. I know you put your prediction in our notes, and I'm assuming you said it yesterday on the show as well. I don't think it's going to be as big of a blowout as last year, but something for me, I think I would probably go 27-13. I think I don't know. The Colts are just better than this Texans team, and if the Texans beat them, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the Texans if they do win this game, it would come down to the Colts just melting down. Because talent-wise, the Colts are better everywhere. I think, in my opinion, I don't think there's a position group on the Texans that's better than a position group on the Colts. It ultimately would come down to just how ready the Colts are finally to play in a week 1 game. Do they finally break this curse? They have to win this one, I think. It's not like a must win, but you got to start this season strong against a weak divisional opponent.
Yeah, and I agree. in any way that I look at the Texans and try and give them credit, there are some good areas there, but I just don't see it being a particularly close game. It's not going to be a 31-0 thing again, but I had 27-10, so very close to what you had there. I'm hoping for the Colts' sake that the difference is maybe a big defensive play that kind of shifts things and just really separates it near the end, but 27-10 Colts is the score that's been stuck in my mind all week.
Yeah, I'm just kind of hoping it's a little bit like last year where, like, even when the game was like 0-0 at the beginning, you could tell after a couple drives, like, the Colts were going to win this game. You know, like it was, you know, I think the Texans are better this year, but I want to see the Colts come out and kind of put their foot down early and show, like, look, we're in a different class than this team. It doesn't need to be a blowout, but it just needs. I just want it to be like a handedly easy like win. You know, I want this to be a game where we come away feeling really good about this team.
Well, I'm coming away feeling really good about this podcast today, Zach. That is it for us today, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us this week as we preview Colts and Texans. The only thing left to do, like we mentioned at the top of the show, is play the game. We'll have a lot more for you coming after Sunday's matchup.
Yeah, make sure you guys are following us on social media at Jake Arthur NFL on Twitter, at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. You can find all our written work at horseshoehuddle.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Locked On Colts. Again, our subscribers keep going up. And also, I just want to tease us a little bit. We might have a special interview coming next week. You know, just might be a little special interview with the Colts player. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just maybe. We just want to reward you guys maybe a little bit. I don't know. I just, you know, put that in your back pocket, you know, whatever. But thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now for your next listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. Distant future.
I would say it's not here yet. Not at all.
I have been waking up at 3 a.m. all week, so you guys could probably tell. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys after the game.